We'll call to order the November 8th, 2022 SGWASA Board of Directors meeting. And I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight. Thank you for coming. And let's get right down to business. We've got a long agenda tonight. Let's start with a roll call from our board secretary.
Very good. Mr. Gooch.
Present.
Ms. Kaczynski.
Present.
Ms. Jordan.
Present.
Mr. Carey.
Present.
Mr. McKellar.
Present.
Mr. McLam.
Present.
And Mr. White.
Present.
All present, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. And our next order of business is an invocation by Commissioner Robert White.
You'll pray with me. Holy Father, we come to you tonight, ask for your many blessings. Be with us and guide us as we serve our communities. Please be with those in the community that need your uplifting prayer. Be with our first responders. Be with those that are sick at home. Please guide us as we make the decisions that affect our community. It's in our most holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
And now for a pledge of allegiance. Commissioner McLean.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And is there any adjustments to the agenda? If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, likewise. The ayes have it, motion carries. Review and approval of minutes from the October 11th meeting. I trust everyone's had time to review these. Is there any comments on them? If not, we entertain a motion.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second on the approval of the minutes from October 11th. Is there any discussion? If not, then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Next item on our agenda is public comments, and we have one gentleman here who signed up, Mr. Ed Gleason. Would you like to come forward?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Ed Gleason. I live in 1973 Bowles Avenue, beautiful Creedmoor, North Carolina. I was debating with myself back there. I don't know if you can hear me as to whether I should get up and say anything tonight at all, but the worst of me took over. I know you've hired, I don't know, a public information officer or someone to do some kind of press for SGWASA and handle the press website. And I'm just really sick and tired of living in a town for now on our own 17 years and watch every day where SGWASA gets beat up. The last people calling our water poison. I mean, when people are, again, and I'm not going to get down to, I'll choose my words very carefully, what I call people who write things in Nextdoor and Facebook. But the bottom line is when what you guys got to do something to let the public know that we don't have to go to a county meeting last night and watch people who were on not near SGWASA, had nothing to do with SGWASA, but when I got up to talk about their complaints, they wanted to talk also about SGWASA. I just think that I would like to see something in the Creedmoor Butner News, a nice photo thing page with the new water treatment center since it's been done. When somebody, again, 17 years in my home, I have a whole house water filter, a filter on my refrigerator, and that's it. And I've had that in every house I've ever owned in my life. And I don't have to scrub my faucets. I have white sinks. They've been white the day I bought the house. They're still white. I don't have to scrub my nozzles with toothbrushes. I don't have any black gook. And my water heater which was 10 years old when I had to replace it, didn't rust after 6 years because of SGWASA's water. I just really would like to see so that our homeowners, people that really care about the town, get to know that you guys are not letting our water from Lake Rogers run into the drinking water of Wake County. Just do something to save what you're all doing. And I really just think it's very, very, very important for the value of our homes. And the fact that our water is not poisoned. Maybe that's the, I lived here when your water was not poisoned, but it was not meeting the quality that it should have. And you guys addressed that. But it really never made a big point of the fact that it was addressed. So that's all I want to say. Just stand up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gleason.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And I believe we had some email comments.
Yes, that is correct. We had some written comments directed to the board. I copied the board on that today, and the copy of those comments will be added to the record copy of 19 minutes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And now our next item is board discussion items. Nobody sent anything in prior to the meeting. Does anyone have anything they'd like to discuss at this time? If not, then we'll move on to our fiscal year 22-23 first quarter and year-to-date financial review by our finance director, Mr. Richard Palmer. How are you tonight, Richard?
I'm good. How are you?
We're gonna keep you busy for a while.
Early and late.
This should be fairly easy. It's pretty straightforward. I won't read the entire legislative memo, but as you know, we do quarterly financial updates to the board, to keep everybody in the know and keep transparency going. And so tonight is the first quarter of 22-23 fiscal year, which runs July 1st through September 30th. The slides in your presentation are difficult to read because of size, but we'll go through them. Basically, the first quarter, we always try to put the budget ordinance in there just to remind us where we started. So in your package, we have 4 sections. The budget ordinance will be the first section, revenue and expenses. And then we added a section this year for the I-85 collection system project, which will kind of tie into Mark's project updates so that we can track the money related to what he's done from that project update. The ordinance, we won't go through the whole thing, but the revenues and expenses are there, and we'll just point out that, of course, we all know that we balance the budget by using $645,949 of fund balance to balance the budget because we did not raise rates and, of course, expenses went up. Of that, approximately $230,000 was just unfunded depreciation, and about $415,000 was an actual use of fund balance, where expenses were expected to exceed revenues. We won't go through all the expenses on the ordinance because you'll see those budget line items on each slide as we do each item. So next slide, please. So we'll start with the revenues. Of course, all the revenues we want to see at 25% or above in the first quarter's overman. You'll see the water revenue was budgeted at $5.3 million. We're at slightly over $1.5 million, which is 29%. Right on the target there. Sewer revenue is budgeted at $8.15 million. We're at nearly $2.3 million, which is 28%. Again, we're exceeding our 25% expectation. Non-billing revenue, and just a reminder, that's all the fees, the late fees, non-payment fees, connect fees, service fees, and engineering fees. We budgeted that conservatively at $226,000. You'll see we've already collected $96,000. And so we're at 42%. And that's not unusual because we never know how those fees can fluctuate. They can go up and down pretty wildly. Interest income is a very interesting slide. Of course, we all know from the news that interest rates have risen. We all know how that's going. It's bad. We had a discussion last month's board meeting about how bad it is to borrow money at that interest rate. The good side is that interest income comes to us in that regard. So we budgeted zero because at the time we passed the budget last year, if you remember, interest rates were essentially zero. Thus far in quarter 1, we've collected over $87,000 in interest revenue. So we're well above expectations. At the projections, if it stays at the amount that we earned in October, just a little information, October 2022, which is not in this number, we collected almost 43,000 in interest revenue. So if it stays at that level, which we expect it will, we should have about $450,000 coming to you in a budget amendment to add to fund balance. That hopefully, if we don't spend any fund balance during the year, can offset some of that fund balance we use in the ordinance.
Exactly.
In comparison, just to give you a little perspective, first quarter of fiscal year 21-22, a year ago when I was standing here talking to you, we only earned $432. So $432 versus $87,000 gives you a little bit of a concept of there. So that was a little bit news in the economy there. Next slide. System development fees. We always budget that very conservative because, of course, they'll come to you in a separate resolution at your end to designate it to a specific project. Cannot be commingled with regular revenues any longer. And we've collected $11,096 in system development fees. That historically is very low, but we know, of course, that growth is somewhat stalled because of some of the wastewater collection problems we're having. So that is low if you look back at when we were passing large developments, allocations to large developments, and we would collect and say $1 million at a time. That's still very low. Fund balance, we always try to revisit fund balance and look at all the budget amendments that you've approved thus far in the year. So that's the next slide. The budget ordinance we saw had a $645,949 use of fund balance to balance the ordinance. We re-encumbered in budget amendment number 1, we did 2 things. We re-encumbered all the POs that we rolled forward to last fiscal year that didn't get delivered or received, and repairs that didn't get made because we were having a delay in parts and supplies for $417,908. We also re-encumbered the money for the SGWASA funded part of the I-5 projects, which was legal fees, land acquisition, that sort of thing, $1 million. Then in BA2, you passed a budget amendment of $146,500 to do the engineering for the chemical tanks at the wastewater plant. And then, of course, you approved BA3 for $92,778, which was the Bowman Road hydrant project that Mark's been updating on. So to date, for the first quarter, we have appropriated $2.3 million in fund balance. And of that $2.3 million, basically $1 million of it is operating, coming out of operating fund balance, and about $1.2 million is coming out of CIP designated fund balance. And just a reminder, you have passed some budget amendments in October, and there's some on the agenda for November. They're not in those numbers, of course. And that's the end of the revenues and fund balance. Going to the next slide, we'll start the expenses. We'll start with the administration department. You see the budget was slightly over, just under $674,000. And as we go into the expenses, remember the opposite is true. We want expenses to be below 25% expended. You'll see that we've expended $147,392, which is 22%. So we're fine in the admin department. Next slide is human resources. The budget is $108,758. We've expended $27,755, which is 26%. One note about that 26%, that is not alarming because there is a software annual renewal that comes due in July that we pay upfront for the whole year. That's skewing your percentage. If you took that out, we'd be at 22%. So that number is high. Next slide is the engineering department. The budget for engineering is $413,445. You'll see that in the first quarter, we spent $42,514, which is 10%. There are a couple of things in there that are skewing that low. And one of those is, of course, the operations engineer vacancy that hadn't been filled yet. So that salary and benefits is still sitting there. That's why your 10% is extremely low. Trust me, Mark has no problem spending money.
We've heard that before.
So next slide is billing and collections. The budget is $427,929, and we're at 22%, $92,908, right on target there. Next slide. Then we'll get into the operational side of things, which is a little more volatile, especially with chemical prices rising, gas prices rising, and supply costs. So the water treatment plant was budgeted just below $1.9 million. You'll see we've expended 494,000, 26%. Again, that 26% is slightly above our target goal of 25%. A few items are in there that are running high, supplies and chemicals for the year, we're still running very high. We'll talk about that. We've talked about it in past quarters. Those prices are up. But a couple of things that was skewing that number, that if you took those out, we'd be back under the 25%. One of them is you approved a chemical removal project, which is a large repair and maintenance item. At the water treatment plant, that has been completed or substantially completed. And so that money has been paid out. And there was another large repair and maintenance that you approved. That one has been 89% completed. So those two large items, if you took those out of the preloaded first quarter, you'd be well below your 25%. Next department is wastewater treatment. The budget is slightly over $2 million. You'll see it, we are at $405,882, which is 20%. Again, that department has substantially expended their repairs and maintenance budget, and you'll see a budget amendment accordingly in the package later on. That account has been expended at 61% already for the first quarter. And you'll have to bear with me, I had a flu or something a few weeks ago, and my voice still doesn't come back completely. The next one is utility maintenance. Budget is just under 2.8 million. You see, we've expended 597,338, 22%. And the depreciation board and other department, which is mainly of the 2.5 million budget, remember 2.3 of that is depreciation expense. We've expended 764,899, which is 30%. That's not alarming, because in that number, we always pay our property and liability and our workers' comp insurance premiums on July 1st for the whole year. If you took those out, we're right at 25%, 24.9. So that's fine. Next one is projects and studies. The budget for that department is 6.4 million. I don't know that you can read it in your slides, but the breakdown is basically, if you recall, 5,140,627 is the engineering for this I-85 project. 1 million is the I-85 SGWASA funded portion. And then we have the wastewater treatment plant chemical tank engineering of 146,500, which we talked about earlier in that fund balance slide. And then we have various studies for 125,726. The various studies includes the rollover of the water model, which we had finished last year, so that rolls forward into this year. The rate model rolled forward into this year, some of it, part of it. And then there's a $50,000 general studies in there for professional services. Let's see, we've spent $206,065, which is 3%. That, as it says at the top, the target goal for that, you really can't go above 25%, because when you're dealing with a construction project or engineer project, it doesn't nice evenly divided between. So that one's well on the target for revenue. The next department is debt service. And we talk about this every year, but that one is very different than the other departments. So the budget is a little over 3.8 million. You see, we've only expended 306,420, which is 8%. So everybody says, oh boy, we're doing really good. But of course, that doesn't come even 12-month periods. Most of our debt comes due between March and June. So you'll see that number, that percentage stay very, very low. And then when we get the fourth quarter of the fiscal year, boom, 100% of it's gone. Next slide. The next two slides we added to try to keep track of the money, like I said, related to I-85 projects. So now we'll go into those slides. So with the I-85 project, the first slide talks about the actual expenses that you've approved. And of course, you've approved $5,352,900 for CDM Smith's contract for the engineering and design phase. Unlike the other slides, since this is a multi-year project that keeps going continuously until it's finished, this capital project, I included what we paid last year and what we paid thus far this year, so that we can kind of track that total as we go forward. So fiscal year 21-22, last fiscal year, we expended 237,571. This year, through the end of the first quarter, we've expended 182,238. I will make a note that that's paid, not actually, their invoices do follow about 1 month behind, so it'll be September invoice is not included in that number. Total spent $419,809, which is 8%. You'll see the ARPA funding follows that at $419,809. So we're still very low on that, and we are getting the ARPA. I think in the previous board meeting, someone asked how the ARPA funding flowing. It is flowing. We're monthly. We're getting those payments back monthly, so we basically pay it about 2 to 3 weeks later. DEQ is reimbursing us for that ARPA grant money. And the next slide covers the SGWASA funded portion versus the grant funded portion. This is the $1 million that the board set aside in BA1 to roll forward to this year. And you'll see the same format there. Last fiscal year, we expended $21,112. This year, we expended $3,750 for a total of $24,862. One note there, that 8% is really 2%. So that is an error in the slide. The previous formula from the previous slide brought forward 8%, it's really 2% expended. And just a disclaimer that is what we paid on September 30th. And again, those invoices follow slightly behind. So if you were to actually look at what was paid for services through September 30th, instead of paid by September 30th, the total spent would be $35,245. Then the next slide, kind of summarizing all those. So you saw in the revenues, the cumulative billing revenue for the quarter is trending right where we want it to be, slightly higher, which is always good with revenues. Non-billing revenues, the fees, are much higher. I will throw in there that we had some delayed payments from some of the large governmental institutions. When we're talking about a bill that size, a late fee of 1.5% can be substantial, so that skews our numbers high sometimes. So they're running high. We talked about interest income. Of course, that's a welcome change. We can put that back in fund balance to try to offset some of the fund balance we're using. Fund balance appropriations for the fiscal year are higher than expected. We saw that number in that fund balance slide, but the bulk of that is coming out of designated fund balance for capital improvement. That's a good sign. You always want to see it used for your infrastructure versus your operating expenses if possible. Departmental expenses overall are materially comparable to budget. We saw those we went through. If you look at the line items in each department, I pointed out a few of those. They are running high. Most of those are related to repairs and maintenance. Unfortunately, those are just a sign of our aging infrastructure. I'm sure you're aware of some of those. Mark brings you quite a few of those every month, and you'll see some more tonight. General legal services are also trending higher than expected for the year. And then, of course, we talked about chemical, gas supply, and freight pricing. As you're aware, all of those are high. And we're getting slack with surcharges, basically for fuel surcharges. They're remaining at elevated levels just like they did last year. I don't see that turning around anytime soon. Answer any questions on this slide. So the financials in general.
Any questions?
No questions, I said that.
Yeah,
Thank you, Richard. It was an excellent presentation.
thank you.
Mr. Chair, we'll make sure that we put up his native presentation on the website after this meeting, along with tonight's meeting, so they can see the presentation clearer than what was presented tonight in the agenda copy. So I apologize for that. We should have had that up and running at the same time, but we'll make sure we have that out there for everyone.
All right. And now we move on to item 10, our Board of Directors meeting schedule for 2023. Mr. Schroeder?
Well, thank you. As the board is aware, the board approves their meeting schedule for the upcoming year. This is the 2023 schedule that's presented to the board of directors this evening. Everything remains pretty much static in terms of the meeting start time at 6 p.m. and the location. And you will see in your packet in the agenda that we actually have the board meeting schedule attached with the dates. So we're looking for any comments from the board on this. And the recommendation is the board of directors approve the 2023 board meeting schedule, I should say.
Any comments, any concerns? We'll hear a motion.
Make a motion that we accept the 2023 board meeting schedule as presented.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor,
Aye.
Aye.
all those opposed. Ayes have it, motion carries. Now we move on to our holiday schedule for 2023.
Mr. Chair, this is information only for the board. So in preparation for our calendar year 2023 schedule, staff has prepared basically our holiday observance schedule. And you will see that schedule attached on the following page. Just a note that the 2023 holiday schedule reflects the same holidays observed in 2022, except for the Juneteenth National Independence Day holiday, which has been added to be in alignment with the federal holidays. So you can see in the attachment that basically we have our 2023 SGWASA holiday schedule. And again, this is just for information only for the board.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? If not, we'll move on to item number 12. Our generator preventative maintenance contract award. Mark,
He jumped up quick.
Yeah,
You didn't even get it out of your mouth yet before he was up.
he's ready.
I can see.
So SGWASA requires program maintenance and inspection, 24-hour emergency service on our generators. We currently have 47 generators scattered around our remote sites. That includes 44 lift stations, 2 booster pumps, and 1 water tower. We also have generators at the 2 plants, water and the wastewater treatment plant. And based on our available resources, we decided that it would be best to bid out an annual generator preventative maintenance contract. We just do not have the staff to maintain all of these generators as we should. We also have sites that don't have generators that should, and we need to add those in the future. So we on August 1st this year, we issued a request for proposals for the generator maintenance. We received on September 1st proposals from 3 separate contractors. They're listed here: National Power, Prime Power, Alternative Power. All submitted a unit price list that you can see. There's 9 items shown on the screen here. All three service providers provided numbers for all 9 of these items, and National Power was the lowest across the board. They were the lowest price, top to bottom, on all these items. So we would like to move forward with them. Recommendations: the SGWASA staff recommends the board approve the annual preventative maintenance contract with the rates provided by National Power for a 1-year term. We want to try this out for 1 year. If it goes as well as we hope, then we will look to bid this out again next year, potentially hire a 3-year contract, because this is something that we need long term. Schedule wise, the anticipated start date is no later than January 1st of 2023. Fiscally, in the approved SGWASA budget, there is $45,000 already approved for generator maintenance. So we would request to spend up to a not to exceed amount of that $45,000 to match the budget. So no budget amendment will be required for this. So there's money already there. No attachments are included, but the unit prices submitted by the low bid contractor are on the previous page. Strategic plan alignment. This falls under focus area number 2 for a reliable and sustainable sanitary sewer system. And finally, the executive director's recommendation to SGWASA board of directors approve the generator preventative maintenance unit costs provided by National Power and authorize SGWASA to proceed with a contract with National Power for the not to exceed amount of $45,000. With that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions from Mark?
Where's the National Power? Where's the company based out of?
I believe, do you remember? I think it's Raleigh, but I'm not 100% sure.
Did they give you a time of, if you were to call for emergency repair, what time frame they would
So
be?
that's actually item number 7 on the description. So estimated emergency response time is 2 hours.
Okay,
So that's we definitely were interested in that.
yeah, that's what I was just curious about.
So Mark, when I'm looking at this chart in item number 1, it says planned service, which includes labor, travel, mileage, and any other incidental cost. And then number 5 says mileage charge. So either, is it included? Is it above what?
So that 5, so 1 is, that's the planned service. So that is going to be $275 per unit for the routine maintenance.
Okay,
Going out
the
checking
scheduled
for-
service.
Right, the
Got
scheduled
it.
service. This item number 5 for the mileage charge, that falls in line with the, for the emergency service.
Okay.
So if we, like during the most recent hurricane that came through, we had generators went out, we had to call somebody to come in and work on it. So in that situation, we would have been charged that mileage charge for that.
Okay, thanks.
They are in Raleigh.
I couldn't remember, I know we had 3, I just could not remember what it was.
Now, for some reason, I thought they were like that Greensboro.
Yeah, well, I hope not, not at $1.75 a mile.
I'm familiar with Prime Power.
Any other questions, comments? Then we're entertain a motion.
I move we approve the generation preventive maintenance unit costs to not to exceed the amount of $45,000.
Thank you. We have a motion. There's a second. Second, okay. All right, have a motion, a second. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Item 13, uniform rental services contract award.
All right, next up, SGWASA provides work uniforms for our field crews, our field staff, and our staff at the water and wastewater treatment plants. Since July of 2020, we have been under contract with Cintas for rental uniform services. That was a 3-year contract that ends December 31st of this year. So we wanted to put it out to competitive bid, and we did that. September of this year, we issued, well, I'll back up one second, analysis wise, we did pull out multiple members of our staff across the board together, and we formed a small committee to just talk about what uniform types, colors, fits, all that we would need to do. So we tried to address our staff's concern, get uniforms that would work the best for us. So September of this year, we issued that RFP. We ended up receiving 3 submittals. Three companies are shown there. You have Osco, Cintas, and UniFirst. All 3 providers submitted very detailed submissions for the unit prices. And if you look at the pages, you can see 16 items with multiple A's and B's there. So there's a lot of different items there that were submitted. Ultimately, the Osco price was the low bid across the board for us. In consideration of the price, the quality of items offered, general reputation and performance capabilities of the contractor, SGWASA determined that Osco is the provider, or is this preferred service provider, and recommends a 3-year rental uniform service contract beginning January 1st of next year. Schedule wise, as I just said, it begins January 1st. Financially, so we performed a financial analysis of all the unit prices and looked at the number of each item we would get for each staff member. We're looking at an annual cost of $10,100 per year with a 3-year estimated cost of $30,300. The current fiscal year budget contains sufficient funding for that. So no budget amendment would be needed. Due to the budget cost, the budgeted cost versus the actual cost, we are looking at a savings here. So we are planning to actually use some of that additional money to buy some winter gear, winter coats, some heavy duty gear that is not available for rent. We can buy that and supply that to our crews. So attachments, you see Exhibit A, which is the bid from Osco. Strategic planning goal falls in line with number 3, or focus area number 3, organizational excellence. And finally, the executive director's recommendation is that the SGWASA Board of Directors approve a unit price contract with Osco Incorporated for rental services and purchases based on their September 26, 22 proposal shown in Exhibit A, effective January 1st of 23 through December 31st of 25. Questions?
Any questions? I have one. With the current vendor and with your new vendor, at the end of the contract or the end of the term, is there any kind of buyout clause for the uniforms? In other words, can you simply pay them a fee and keep them, nominal fee? Or do they charge you full retail per uniform that's not turned in? And that's kind of, I know that's kind of a technical question and probably not thought about it.
No, I'll be happy to answer that. Let me just say before I answer that, that you can see on the proposal sheet that we actually have purchase costs on these uniforms as well as rental costs. So there are times that employees have been given uniforms, and when the employee is no longer working for us, we ask for the uniforms back. And if we do not get those, then we charge the employee basically that cost for not returning that. So we have those built in. We also have unit price in this contract for items that we may want to purchase outright versus rental. So to your question, at the end of this contract period, basically at the end of December, we're going to be returning all of the uniforms in the inventory back to the current provider.
Yeah.
So we have not put anything in there for any type of buyout at this point. I would imagine as we get closer to that turn-in time, we'll have conversations with the current vendor and talk about that. But all of our employees have gone through their selection process currently with the company we're proposing here. We've been measured. We have all that information. And following the board's approval tonight, if we seek that, we'll finish the contract. And then we should have a pretty good changeover from the current contract to the future contract that we're proposing this evening.
Yeah.
Does that address your question?
Yes, in the past, I've run into a deal where, each employee is supposed to have a certain amount of clothes, certain amount of shirts, certain amount of pants. And over the course of the years, they gotten lost or gotten destroyed or something, hadn't been replaced. And when time comes to turn in, instead of having, say, 15, they may have 10. And the company charged retail price for the ones that wasn't turned in. Had another company that pretty much wrote them off. So, I just wondered which way these companies were going with that. And, that's just something you can think about.
We'll take a look at that.
And then take a look at it. It's just, I don't think it should have a major bearing on us making the decision to pursue the contract. It's just something you may want to look at in the contract to, as a possible cost saving.
Okay, thank you.
So we're not going with the rental heavy jackets. We're gonna buy them outright.
That's probably the best route.
Yeah, we do, just to add to that. So we have shirts and pants that we offer in combination. The details here, we have 14 shirts as far as this contract goes. So the employees have the option to get 7 long sleeve shirts and 7 short sleeve shirts. They have 11 uniform pants that are on rotation, more shirts than pants, so they have that option. And a lot of the team members this year wanted some polo shirts versus heavy work shirts, those combinations. But we also do provide the light and the heavy jacket to the employees as standard rental gear as well as coveralls. So some of the specialty equipment are some of the heavier winter gear for the bib overalls that they use, and some of the heavier jackets that we don't really need on a rental basis, but on a purchase basis. So we see this as a great opportunity with some of the savings to outfit some of our team members here for some of those water main breaks that we have in the winter time, for example. And then look at a replacement schedule over the next 3 years in terms of what that schedule would be like.
We had them all last year. There's not gonna be any this year.
I agree. Do you want to make a motion for that?
Mr. Chair, make a motion that we approve the unit price contract with Alsco for rental services and purchases based on their proposal shown in Exhibit A, effective 1/1/23 through 12/31/23.
We got a motion. We have a
25,
second.
sorry.
Second. We got a second in 2 places, so choose. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, Mark, we're going to talk about the water treatment plant, Lake Hope check valve purchase and an installation of water contract.
Okay, so our raw water intake is located at the Lake Hope Dam. We have this full raw water pump station there. At this pump station, we have 3 pumps that are in operation to take water and send it to the water plant. It's the only site we have, so it's very important. We have identified some old failing equipment. Over the past couple of years, we have rebuilt the 3 pumps that are there. The pumps are operating as they should. However, we have determined that the 3 16-inch check valves and some of the electrical gear, motor, soft start equipment needs to be replaced. So it's been there for a couple of decades. Some of the check valves, I believe 2 of them have failed outright. Some of the electrical equipment has begun to fail, and we want to get all that replaced and operational. That is one site we cannot afford to let it go down. So earlier this year, we sought proposals from multiple contractors to replace 3 16-inch check valves and the soft start electric equipment. We received bids from 4 separate vendors. We've received complete bids from 2. The other 2 vendors only could do check valves, and they could not do the soft start electrical components as well. I think it's kind of hard to find folks that could do what we were trying to do here. But we felt that 2 bids that we did receive were close, they were competitive. In addition, the other 2 providers, the prices they gave for those check valves are actually higher than the 2 complete bids we had. So we feel confident that the 2 bids are good. So our recommendation is that the board approve replacement of 3 16-inch diameter check valves and the 3 soft starts to be installed by the located contractor, which is Tincarva Machinery Company. Schedule for this project following board approval. A notice to proceed will be provided to Tincarva, and the necessary equipment will be ordered and installed. This is turnkey. We're asking them to install it, remove the old equipment, or provide the equipment and installation, not just buy the equipment. So financially, there was no set budget for this, so this would be a budget amendment. This is on budget amendment number 7 following the agenda, but we're looking for authority to spend $112,182, which includes the base price of $101,984 and a 10% contingency amount. Attachments included to this are the Tincarva Machinery Company proposal. For the strategic plan alignment, we're looking at focus area number 1 for safe, reliable, and sustainable water system. Finally, the executive director's recommendation is that the SGWASA board of directors approve the purchase and installation of 3 16-inch diameter check valves and 3 soft starts for the Lake Cold water pump station from Tincarva Machinery Company for the not to exceed amount of $112,182, excluding local and state taxes. So with that, I'll take any questions.
So is it possible for that to come out of utility maintenance?
That money is, Richard can speak to the exact amount we have in that, but
I'm looking at it. That's the reason I asked. And then if you need adjustments later, you will do the adjustments later. Why would you not use that money first?
Now, I thought we talked about utility.
You went over it earlier this evening, and it's a budget of $2,700,000. And I can't actually see all the numbers.
Okay, so you're looking at the total for that department.
Correct.
There's no chunk of money in that department, even close to that number, that we could steal. You would be still with things like, you have to remember salaries, benefits, all those things are in there. There's no large chunk of money for repairs in the utilities department. Is that something you're seeing on a slide I can address?
I'm just looking at utility maintenance.
Okay, let me pull that slide back up if you want.
Page
Number on the agenda.
26.
Right, so utility maintenance at $597,000 that was spent thus far of the 2.8 million, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Right, so that's all departments, that's water line maintenance, sewer line maintenance, pump station maintenance. But all of those departments have no money. There's not even close to a, let's say, a $50,000 cushion for repairs and maintenance, much less $100,000 that have things in it like your tank maintenance, which are $120,000. But you can't really take that because you know that's coming due. You see what I'm saying? But yes, we could do a budget amendment to steal that money,
Well,
but then within a month or 2, you'd need it back.
right. I'm just saying, if you use it for this now, come the end of the year, if we need it later, then that's when you make the budget amendment.
Well, What I'm saying though is the money that is in there is so tightly budgeted, we know, for instance, tank maintenance. We already have a contract with that tank maintenance that says it's gonna come due on X day, and it's gonna be this dollar amount. So that we don't budget enough general repairs and maintenance, I guess is that.
Do we have a separate for repair and maintenance?
In those departments we do, but there's not, they're all already running expended above 25%, you see what I'm saying? Now, we could also do a budget amendment, we would need to move it to the proper department regardless, so even if we stole it from utilities, we'd need a budget amendment to move it to the raw water department, because that's where your ordinance is.
So you're saying this is not a utility maintenance item?
Excuse me. No, sir, this is, if you look at your ordinance, this is the raw water department, Lake Holt is the raw water department. So we still need a budget amendment, even if you took it from the utility departments. If you look back at your ordinance on that presentation, first page of the ordinance, you'll see that the expenses for utilities are 4 different departments. So even if we did have a cushion of money in the repairs there, 100,000, let's say, sitting over there unused, and we didn't know whether we're gonna need it or not. If we stole that whole 100,000 from that department, we'd still need a budget amendment to move it up to the 7130 raw water department. So we could do that. But then the next time you have a water line break or a pavement emergency repair, you have no money. And then we run into an emergency repair situation. There's just not a cushion of 100,000 sitting in any of those departments.
Okay, I guess I'm not understanding the utility maintenance. And I'm just going by the way we normally do this up in STEM. If I've got a budget for this to be done, then I would go ahead and take and use that budget. Then when I need it later, I would make my budget amendment. Why would you not use this first and you already have it budgeted?
Well, you have to do a budget amendment anyway, because it's in the department. You wouldn't put the expense in the utility maintenance department when it's at Lake Holt, which every other expense for Lake Holt is in the raw water line item in the ordinance. So we'd still have to do a budget amendment. We just wouldn't be appropriating fund balance for it. We would be moving it from one department to the other, and there'll be no appropriation of fund balance.
So you're saying you have a separate line item for the raw water,
Separate department.
separate
In
department?
your ordinance, you have a raw water department, which it's all the expenses of Lake Holt, the electricity, the repairs, any maintenance that occurs at Lake Holt. That's all in your raw water in your ordinance.
So you don't have a separate line item for your raw water utility?
No, that's correct. All raw water, everything at Lake Holt is in a department called raw water. And that's on the ordinance that way. And you see that that's very low. It's only 54,100, which is mostly your electricities and some generator maintenance. I think there's a cushion there of like 2,000 for generator maintenance and a small repair budget, but just small repairs. So we'd still need a budget on that. But you're right, we wouldn't be appropriating fund balance. We'd just be moving it from one department to the other. But we don't have enough money to move it. We would definitely need a budget amendment to put it right back. That may be 2 months down the road, but it wouldn't be 6 or 9 months down the road. I guess is my answer to that question.
Gotcha.
So we budget so tightly because we knew we were using fund balance already. That answer.
Yep, you answered my question with the raw water. You just said a separate, it's totally a
It
separate
would
line
still
item.
have to be moved, right? You have to move the budget to meet the ordinance.
Mark, I'd like to say something before. So I think that some of you may be thinking, so why wasn't this planned, or why wasn't this already in the budget? Why are we talking about this at this point? And I think that you start to understand the emphasis we've been placing on creating the CIP. And this is an item that we've discovered in this last couple of months as we've been working on this, so we have needs for this raw water station. We're developing the CIP, we're doing these evaluations, and ideally what you would like to have in your operating budget, regardless of the department it sits in, is have money within that department basically to pay for these projects that you've already scheduled for the next 5 years or 10 years. That's where we want to be. The organization was not run on that planning foundation, if you will, and that's what we are creating now. So in the near future, instead of having these projects brought to you and asking for budget amendments, quite honestly, if we plan correctly and finance correctly, we will have these projects sitting already within the budgets or within a capital improvement plan that will be still asking for approval by the board, but the money will be in there for these projects. So we are playing catch up. overall in creating our CIP. And a lot of these projects we've been bringing to you for the last 3 years as we're trying to catch up. That's why you see this going on. So I'm not sure if any of you were thinking about that during that discussion, but I know that that's a key factor here as to how we're moving forward with the organization to continue to do that. So if there's any questions by the board for me, be happy to answer those. If not, we'll mark it here on this important project out at Lake Pool. Thank you, Mark.
Any further?
I'm good.
Then we'll call for a motion.
Make a motion that we move with the executive director's recommendation to purchase and install 3 16-inch diameter check valves and 3 soft starts for the Lake Hope water supply station from 10 Carva Machinery Company for the not to exceed amount of $112,182 excluding local and state taxes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Now, Mark, we got the wastewater treatment plant SCADA equipment purchase and installation.
One more with me. So in both of our treatment plants, we have SCADA software, SCADA systems, and that stands for supervisory control and data acquisition. And basically that allows us from a single workstation to monitor and run the entire plant. We can turn pumps on and off. We can see what different meters, what different gauges are reading. And it really helps a lot with the way we run the plants. The water treatment plant had its SCADA system installed with this most recent upgrade. They didn't have it before. The wastewater treatment plant has SCADA installed at the most recent upgrade, and the hardware and the software package that plant is operating now is 7 years old. The SCADA providers recommend upgrades every 3 to 5 years, and we're operating on 7-year-old software. So we decided that it's best to go ahead and make those upgrades. We are seeking to replace 2 existing SCADA server workstation computers with 2 new SCADA server workstation computers, upgrade the SCADA software to the latest Rockwell factory taught version. That's the software package we use now. Upgrades will ultimately improve the reliability and operability of the SCADA system and ultimately the wastewater treatment plant for the next 5+ years. We do have, this is one that we did plan for. We did put $39,000 into the budget in this current fiscal year. Due to the specialized technology of the SCADA system, there are not too many integrators out there around us that can install the software, but we did see proposals. We did receive 2. We got one from Fortech Incorporated, who's the integrator who installed it originally at the wastewater plant. Custom Controls submitted the other, which they are the integrator for the water treatment plant. You can see the prices shown here. There is a large discrepancy there. So Fortech was by far the lowest price SCADA upgrade. Next steps, following board approval, we will schedule the work to be performed with Fortech and anticipate a 2 to 3 month timeline to complete the new hardware and software integration. For the staff recommendation, staff recommends that we upgrade the SCADA computers and software with the Fortech proposal. Financially, as I said, we had $39,000 in the approved budget, and we're requesting to spend $38,858, which is a base cost of $36,316 plus a 7% contingency for this project. I really don't think we need a contingency on this, but we wanted to throw one in just in case we wanted to make any minor hardware monitor changes, things like that. So we're looking at the base cost plus 7%, and that still falls within the $39,000 of approved budget. For the strategic plan alignment, this falls under focus area number 2 for reliable and sustainable sanitary sewer system. And finally, the executive director's recommendation is that the SGWASA board of directors approve the purchase and installation of new SCADA equipment from Fortech Incorporated with a not to exceed amount of $38,858, excluding local and state taxes. So with that, I'll take questions.
Do you have any idea what the big discrepancy is in these 2 proposals? I mean, $50,000 is a big discrepancy. What are we not getting?
If we're doing apples to apples, then yeah, that's a big number difference.
They did the same thing. I believe Fortech that I mentioned that they installed the hardware and software at the plant originally. I think they're just familiar with what we've got. They know exactly what we have. They know all the monitors. They know all the different meters and hardware we have. And I think it's just that understanding. I was surprised to see that big of a difference as well, but.
Is that our discount?
Considering Fortech is in Charlotte and the other
Yeah,
one's in Raleigh, that's,
It's a huge, huge difference.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's big,
It's a big
big
discount.
difference in price, but there again, if you got a company that's already installed the system, they're familiar with it.
It'll probably be
Oh,
very
that
easy for
sounds,
them.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, we obviously got our money's worth in the first place.
exactly right.
Yes.
See, Richard's happy that I'm saving money on this. So.
Oh, yeah.
I see him
Look
smiling.
at him smiling over there. He's
Yeah,
not-
look
he
at
doesn't
Richard's
think
smile.
I mean, I guess the only statement I would make is if we have the software and the computers and they recommend a certain time we need to replace it, going forward, we need to put that in our plan to replace it at the recommended.
It's actually, so as our director was mentioning, the capital improvement plan, so I've got a draft working on that. It's a lot of work, but I actually did put on a 5-year cycle, replacing SCADA software and hardware at both plants. So that's actually a line item in the capital improvement plan.
That's great.
Draft form.
Yeah.
So we definitely need to plan for that.
Technology will pass you by if you don't.
Be like me, my old laptop. Any other discussion? Well, we'll then call for motion. then.
Motion to move forward.
Got a
Second.
motion? Is there a second? Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mark,
Thank
you just
you. And now we
Spending money,
have.
Mark.
Yeah.
Spending money. Now we got to get the financial guy to come. Mr. Bauman's gonna tell us what we're spending.
Yeah, and then we have fiscal year 22-23 budget amendment number 6. Lake Hope.
Yeah,
Check
going back to
valves.
Mark's item, he didn't save us 87,000. He knew if he had 87,000, he didn't have any money. He got to come to me for money. He didn't want that fight, so he found a much more.
See what happened.
That's how that worked.
Mr. Baumer, he wants to start using some of the,
Next year's money.
that money that we're getting for our, back in our account there, which we're gonna put back in general fund. That
Don't
interest
encourage. So in your package tonight, related to the item Mark presented earlier, we have budget amendment number 6. That's budget number 6 for 2022-23. It's appropriating the budget for the Lake Hope Valve project or repair that you just approved. You'll see in the legislative memo, you've already approved 5 budget amendments for the year thus far, totaling slightly over 1.7 million. So we're appropriating revenue from fund balance of 112,182, which corresponds to the amount Mark mentioned. We're putting it, as Mr. McGlynn, as we were discussing, we're putting it in the raw water department for 112,182 to increase the expenditures for that department. And the executive director's recommendation is that the board of directors approve budget amendment number 6 as presented.
Okay, any questions, for Richard? We entertain a motion then.
I make a motion, we approve budget amendment 6 for 22-23 year.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 17, fiscal year 22-23 budget amendment number 7, repairs and maintenance.
So this is really the first kind of general budget amendment coming to the board, other than rolling forward projects that we completed or projects that were unanticipated in the budget originally that required a budget amendment. So budget amendment number 7 for fiscal year 22-23 is appropriating additional budget for general legal services, replacement of some filter meters at the water treatment plant. Don't ask me what that is, Mark, I have to tell you. And for some pump repairs and general repairs at the wastewater treatment plant. To Mr. McLean's point earlier, just to point out, the utilities department entails water line maintenance, sewer line maintenance, and pump station maintenance. If this is a repair at Lake Hope, the water treatment facility or the wastewater facility, there are different line items on the ordinance. So you'll see that reflected in this budget amendment as well, including budget amendment number 6 that you just approved. You've already approved 1,842,518 of appropriating fund balance this year. And so budget amendment number 7 is shown you below. We're transferring from fund balance $138,200 for appropriate that much fund balance. It's being distributed to the expense department as follows: administration $50,000 for general legal services, water treatment plant department $26,700 for meter repairs and replacements, and the wastewater treatment plant for some pump repairs and general repairs, which are much smaller, I think, pumps and motors, for a total of $138,200. The executive director's recommendation is that the board of directors approve budget amendment 7.
Any questions for Richard?
Is the wastewater treatment item, is that for some of the digester stuff? Where you just drain the tanks and had to replace some of the PVC or?
No, that's last year.
They were doing 2 more this year.
Yeah, they did 2 more just recently. Didn't you just drain some?
They haven't done it yet. We just talked about it.
Approved POR 4.
So the, for the wastewater treatment plant, we had a pump on the oxidation ditches that went bad. Okay, they were, that falls under our director's authority to approve those purchases. I mean, it was a smaller one, but it was that pump. And I believe that their repairs and maintenance budget was being spent faster than planned. I think it was above that 25% mark with a lot of different smaller issues. For example, we found a gate valve at the digesters that had cracked. I mean, this was original 1940s gate valve, and it had cracked longitudinally across the valve, and we needed to replace those. So those were, $1,500 a piece, some smaller things like that. So that's what the wastewater treatment plant items are.
Any other questions? Then we entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve budget amendment number 7.
We have a motion to hear a second. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Ayes have it, motion carries. Now we got Mark back up at bat. Project updates.
All right, so this is our project updates. There we go. Next slide. We're gonna go over 4 separate projects: I-85 project, the lead and copper rule revision compliance project, the Bowman Road fire hydrants, and the PFAS investigation and management project. Next slide, please. So the first up is the I-85 project, and this is, as you've seen many times, just overall scope. At this point, not much has changed on that scope. As we've discussed, 3 lift stations, multiple force main and gravity sewer replacement. Next slide. So over the last 30 days, we've made a lot of progress on this project. I mentioned at the last board meeting that Creedmoor and Butner updated their long-range plans and their zoning maps and zoning projections. So we had to redo our hydraulic sewer model based on those numbers to make sure that we were sizing everything correctly. So over the past 30 days, we finalized that hydraulic model and looked at the impacts of that on the overall scope of the project. We began the USDA funding application. It's going to be a lot of work, but we did get that process started over the past few weeks. We made progress on the environmental report and engineering report that are required to meet the USDA requirements for their funding. We met with Duke Energy regarding encroachments into their transmission line rights of way. We met with our legal team, the town of Butner, regarding sewer routes and easement acquisitions. I think I mentioned before that we have upwards of about 170 easements that we may need. I really think we're going to need much less than that, but we've had multiple meetings with Jim and some of his folks to look at some of that, the easement and property acquisition requirements. And then we've made a lot of progress on the stream, wetland, and endangered species evaluations, and our surveying and underground utilities are still in progress. If you guys have been driving around Butner or the project area, you've probably seen the guys out on the side of the road. So next slide, please. Over the next 30 days, we're expecting to get the technical report showing updated flow projections from the revised hydraulic models. We are working on title and property research to identify the necessary easements and potential sewer route revisions. According coordinating with property owners for acquiring the 3 separate lift station properties. Continuing the USDA funding application, we want to put our foot on the gas and get that done as quickly as we can, obviously. And then continuing the stream of wetland and endangered species and the survey work. Next slide. So this is an updated schedule. Not a lot that you will notice has changed on this. The dates, the bid advertisement dates are still the same. We have made a few tweaks here and there throughout, but this shows overall surveying, final design, permitting, and bidding scope. We're still looking at late 24 going out to bid. Next slide. So that concludes the update for the I-85 project. Are there any questions on that project?
So we don't own the land we're putting these lift stations on?
So
Lift stations, you have pipe, no.
Property owner lift stations, that's what it said.
so we
Nope, the other way.
so we've got the red boxes on the screen are existing lift stations that are planning to be taken offline. The green are new lift stations. Where we have current lift stations, we don't have enough property to just put another lift station
Right.
right next to it. So we will have to acquire some additional land.
Okay.
And that's something that we're working on. We're looking at trying to pinpoint exactly where it needs to go. We got the general idea for where they all need to be. We're trying to get the right piece of property and the right acreage.
So have the purchases of that land been included in our estimate for this project?
That was not in the overall construction cost. I do not.
Sure. I'll be happy to answer that. So we had an overall project cost and we have an engineering contract set up, and we also set money aside, existing revenues for land acquisition, legal fees, and purchase of easements as necessary. So we do have that.
Okay.
I had a mental block on that. I needed some help.
It's okay. All right.
If no other questions, we'll go to the lead copper rule revision compliance project. So briefly, the project scope, the EPA passed the rule effective December 16th of last year, where every utility provider has to basically start a lead copper program. The rule outlines 8 different items that are on the next slide that all water systems must complete before October 16th of 24. So you can see those 8 items here, with number 1 being one of the largest scope items, is that developing an inventory of all service lines, including both the public side and private side materials, and make that publicly available. So that's a very large item for this scope, and that's going to be the most time consuming. We'll go to the next slide. So project schedule for this, we issued an RFQ, request for qualifications, and received submittals from 3 separate engineering consultants to help us out on this project. We ended up selecting the top 2 to have interviews with. On October 26th, we had interviews and then ultimately selected Hazen and Sawyer based on their submittal package and interviews. We selected them to manage the project for us. We're currently working with them on the scope and proposal, and I hope to bring their proposal for future board approval very soon.
Can you go back two, I guess it'd be 2 slides now. The first part about including public side and private side materials. So this is just developing an inventory, and obviously, once you develop this inventory, something needs to be done to fix the problem.
Right.
So we're paying for the customers are paying for this asset inventory
So
through this contract.
So we have to put an inventory together, like you said, public and private. So public is between the water main and the water meter. Private is from the water meter to their house. So if there are later copper service lines on the public side, then we have to put a plan in place to replace that as a water sewer provider. On the private side, we have to notify folks what they have. We are not responsible for replacing that. I believe in talking with the consultants, I believe that there is going to be some federal, potentially ARPA money available out there for private owners to try to get money to replace that. That's something we just have to identify and notify folks if they have one of these materials. but we do not have to, we're not responsible for upgrading.
It comes kind of applicable in some public comments I might make later about, who provides what. Is it whose responsibility? So, thank
Yeah,
you.
we'll definitely be clear and transparent on what is ours and what is the private landowner.
Right.
We want to help how we can, but obviously we can't go out and change private services across the board.
Thank you.
So question, so does that mean that the homeowner is confined to the October 16, 24 date? Or just,
So we have to provide an inventory and the 8 items are on that list. We have to have a replacement plan for all the public. We have to have notification for the public, or for all private landowners. Those items, we are required as a utility, public utility, to have those items complete by that date. Private landowners do not have to meet any kind of replacement by that date.
Okay.
And we don't have to have any replacements done by that date. We just have to have a plan
just have,
together.
okay. Thank you.
Next up is, I believe, the Bone Run Fire Hydrant Project. So this is one that was previously approved by the board. This was, project scope here was install a new fire hydrant, water service, 3-inch water meter, and abandon old water service and components. The approved project cost was $92,778. The actual cost was $92,581. So about $150 savings, also to make Richard happy. So project schedule, project is complete. Contractor finished this past week. Here are a few pictures from the in progress. So you can see some of the fittings that were installed on that picture to the left, new fire hydrant, some of the work of the lines being installed. The third picture is some of the old equipment that was pulled out of the ground. On the right was the meter box being installed. So that project is complete. New fire hydrant in, we're good. Any questions? All right. Next up is the PFAS investigation and management. So project scope. We've been working with a consultant, Hazen, who did a lot of the work on they did the work on the water treatment plant, and they got a lot of experience with PFAS. They provide a scope of services to us to provide a PFAS sampling and analysis plan. A draft plan was reviewed in October by SGWASA staff, and a final plan was received on November 7th, so just before the board meeting. So this diagram here, this shows from this is taken from the management plan. So this is 7 locations on Lake Holt where we want to take samples for PFAS, and there's several different tributaries that come into the lake. So we've got analysis points taken at those to try to pinpoint where we do have PFAS entering the lake. We can really nail down where that's coming from. So that's 7 locations that we've identified to take samples. We'll go to the next slide, please. So this shows a schedule between basically now and January 24. You see various grab samples from what DEQ is taking. We've got grab samples, which is basically consultant will go out and take samples by hand in the water at those different locations. We're planning to take samples in January and February next year. Depending on those results, we could potentially add a POCUS sampling, which is a type of a meter that you can put down in the water, which over a longer period of time can read the PFAS. So depending on the results from the grab sample, we may end up doing 2 rounds of that POCUS sample as well. So you can see a wide range of sampling throughout the next year for this project. I'll go to the next slide. So the PFAS sampling plan provided by our consultant included cost estimates as well. Here you can see the grab samples. The analysis cost is about $300 a sample. The UCMR, that's something that we have to take. That's required. We have to take that from our finished water every year anyway, or monthly, and that's $500 a sample. POCUS sampling is $800 for the hardware and $300 for the analysis of each sample. And then we also would need to hire a contractor to go out and do that for us. That's not something that we want to go out and do ourselves. We want a third party to manage that for us. So once you put all those numbers together, the number of samples and the cost estimates, You can see it's not a small fee, but it's, we're looking at about $51,000 if we actually need all of those samples that we showed. So that's what we're potentially looking at over the next year. So next slide. So I mentioned NCDEQ, they're also performing samples or sampling. Their team, the NCDEQ Division of Water Resources team, started testing in September. And they're collecting raw water and treated samples at both the treatment plant and some taps through the system. And they're planning to collect additional samples through the rest of the year. And to date, we have not received any test results from DEQ yet. So we have no numbers to share about what the results are. As soon as we have those, we will share. So that concludes the PFAS update. Are there any questions there?
Any questions?
That one test, is it POCUS?
Yes.
It says the results are not sufficient. Back one more slide. Nope. Sampling have been conducted on previous grab sampling does not provide sufficient information on sampling.
So if the graph samples, when the consultant goes out and takes samples by hand, if those results we don't feel are valid, or if there's some issue with those by hand samples, then we would move to that focus and install that meter in the water.
Okay.
So that would be used if the graph samples are not sufficient.
So we have to use the inflatable boat that the county has bought and take it out in the middle of the water and get samples. You're gonna loan that to us, right? The
You're
boat-
just joking.
No, the boat that the county bought from Minerva.
They didn't buy it.
Next question.
Yeah,
They gave it to us.
Oh, I thought they paid $175.
That's, if they did, I didn't know about it.
County had nothing to do with any of that.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Mark?
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
No further questions for Mark. We'll come to comments from our executive director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. First of all, I'd like to thank staff for tonight's presentation. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Mark. In the audience this evening, we have Crystal Lee, our public information officer, roaming around taking pictures. Priscilla Adcock, our HR manager, was in the audience earlier this evening. I want to thank her for being here as well to support us on any questions the board may have had regarding our holiday schedule coming up. I had the opportunity recently to perform a water treatment plant upgrade tour with the elected officials with the town of Butler. It was a very good tour. We spent about an hour and 15 minutes on site walking around the facility. Crystal was there with us. She got an education on the water treatment plant as well, and she's actually put in production together for us, some video, and some great work for us as far as communications for that. I'd just like to touch on what Mr. Gleason said this evening about communications, and just, remind the board that the board made it a priority for us to bring on a communications manager 2 budgets ago, basically. And the board is aware that we had some challenges bringing somebody on staff. I was covering that along with some other duties for this last year, and then we were able to bring Crystal on board with us here just a couple months ago. And she's been able to make a tremendous difference in pushing out information across new social media sites for us that we didn't have previously. So she's creating a lot of content presently, and we're going to be putting more and more of that information out. She's already posting things on our website for us. She's doing a digest of important items from the board, from our board meetings, and so on and so forth. To address Mr. Gleason's comments this evening, we are doing more, and we are going to have more information out there with a lot of important programs. We're just getting started. So we appreciate those comments, and we're going to live up to that and push out a lot more information. So that's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from our attorney?
No comments.
Okay, and I guess there's no need for a closed session. Didn't hear anybody asking for one. There are comments from our board members. Mr. McKellar.
The only thing I have a question about is, it was mentioned that we have the comments before closed sessions. How's that discussion going?
We hadn't discussed it. If you want to, I'll just try to remember that if we have a closed session, to have the comments before we go into closed session.
That'd be great.
Would that be sufficient? And if you want to, we can just switch it around on the agenda. I don't think we have to have a motion for that, do we?
I don't think so.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
and we'll technically put the closed session at the next to the bottom. Adjournment would be last, but the closed
Does it
session.
have to be?
Pardon me?
Does it have to be?
No, we don't have to.
Adjournment has to be last?
Pardon
Adjournment has to be last?
me? No, unless you want to put it first. Anything else, Mr. McCollum?
That's it.
All right, thank you. Mr. White.
Just appreciate all the work that's been done by our staff and our management team. Going into the holidays, just want to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving and other holidays that ones may celebrate. And I believe it was mentioned that I don't know if we meet again before, but the holiday luncheon for the employees will be December the 7th. I believe that was what I was told, 11:30 to 2, I believe is what they said. So it's a good time to come and talk with the staff, especially the operational staff that are always out in the cold and the wet and everything else. So just reiterate that we appreciate everything everyone does and move forward into the new year.
Mr. McLean.
No comment.
Mr. Karen.
So two quick points. Well, I'll make it three. I won't belabor it too much, but first of all, I'd like to congratulate our chairman, Mr. Gooch, was reappointed for another term on the SGWASA board by the Board of County Commissioners last night for his three-year term. Is that correct?
And you accepted it.
He had no choice but to accept it. Even if you voted against it, it would have been 6-1. I'd like to thank you all
Abstain.
for understanding my absence last month. As a progress report, I've got the most outstanding patient in the world, and I appreciate each of you reaching out with your thoughts and prayers. I've come to know our Lord and Savior in the last 3 months more than I ever have in my whole life, and it's been a blessing that Liz is doing so well. So I want to thank y'all from that front, and we've been very public about it. So I'm not speaking out of school. It's very important for ladies to get their mammograms on time and on schedule, because you never know what can pop up on one of those things. So not commenting on public comment, but it's very difficult not to get in the mud. But unfortunately, sometimes folks take snippets and sound bites and regurge, and you say things 100 times over again and hire consultants to come in and produce, lengthy documents about science and give expert opinion, but that's not good enough for folks. They want you to say yes to what they're telling you. When you tell them no is not a good word. We've all been around 2-year-olds before, and when you tell a 2-year-old no, that's trouble. In fact, that's one of their favorite words to say to you as an adult. But it's unfortunate, and not to rehash last night at the county commissioner board, but the common thread of social media in this day and age, and folks that have little to no fact, or just a jumbled order of some facts, making conclusions and reaching on some things, publicly on this board, folks are upset that I'm not a water customer. I was from 97 until 2017. 17 was the year I was appointed to this board, and moved shortly after that appointment. But I always had a filter in my house, every house I ever owned, just like the public comment this morning, because that's kind of a smart thing to do. And I don't think you need a water authority to provide that filter to you at cost to everybody else on the system. If you feel you need a filter, you can look at the facts that are available to you publicly and buy yourself a filter. But don't tell all your neighbors, you've got to buy a filter. And if you don't buy this special kind of filter, you're gonna die. And this water company should be buying you this special kind of filter because they have so much money available, not to mention where we get our money from, which is the ratepayers. But there's some things that go along with home ownership and understanding that there's no guarantee in the world that the hole in the ground that you're depending on for water might have an issue. And it's not the collective's responsibility to guarantee you as a private individual that everything's gonna be okay. And sometimes individuals have things that happen to them that really sucks when it happens to you if you're that individual. But as a collective and not as a water and sewer authority, if our little hole in the water became an issue, it would be catastrophic. And for folks to believe that every catastrophic thing that can happen in this planet, we have a backup plan and have the funding in place to execute that backup plan, and that we've thought of every scenario. I lose enough sleep at night, and I'm sure all of you do too. So I will end with that saying I'm blessed to continue to serve on this board, and I hope that the voters will continue to do that. The election, I think, ends here in a few minutes. But y'all have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Jordan.
Tim said it all. No further comment.
Okay. Well, Vice Chair Kaczynski.
Thank you, sir. Tim did say it all, Linda. You're exactly right. I went to a proposed housing development meeting this past week about a developer that is trying to put a new housing development in Creedmoor and invited all the surrounding neighbors. And it was, the room held 51 people. And there was over 54 there and a lot of people waiting downstairs. The conversation went from, we're going to build 400 homes and use 144 acres to, my SGWASA bill is so high, my water is poison, you can't do it, why would you build this? It got completely off topic. Exactly what Tim is saying. It's constant. And just for the record, first thing I like to make sure that everybody understands is SGWASA does not have 20,000 customers. Never have. Since the year I started on this, we had 5,900. And if you need to compare that, you can go out to the UNC School of Government and they will show you exactly how many customers we have. Even with Amberleaf, we still don't have 20,000 customers. If we did, the water rates would be much lower. And although we are going to lower them next July, if we had 20,000 customers now, we'd be fine. But we have done a lot in the 3 years that I've been on the board. I want to congratulate Commissioner Way for being reappointed to the board. I wasn't at that meeting. I would have voted for you myself, but I wasn't there. Commissioner Gooch, I'm glad you're staying. Councilwoman Jordan, I'm glad you're staying. I think we are a great team and I like to keep it that way.
Thank you.
I'm also in favor of moving closed session to after comments. So no argument for me there.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, and you know, I'm thankful to be back on the board for another 3 years. I've sort of I've served, next month will be 5 years. And at times progress has been painfully slow. But in recent years with Director Shoria coming in and bringing in a new team, adding new members, expanding, we've reached a very different level, a very new level, and I feel like we're poised to make great strides in the future. It's like we've been making baby steps, but hopefully we're kind of staying ahead of the curve on stuff. When I came here, we were had been behind the curve on the disinfection byproducts, and we've gotten through a string of violations. And when you looked at it, it was like the game Pop-A-Mole. It pops up here, there, and everywhere. And like you get one area straightened out and the other one popped up, and it'd been very frustrating for the staff at SGWASA. They've been working on it diligently for years, and they finally got it under control. And just so happened it coincided with me coming on the board. We came into compliance the quarter that I was appointed here. I was appointed in November, came on in December. The fourth quarter test results were low enough that it brought us not only in compliance for the quarter, but for the annual running average. And we've been in compliance since then. And we don't get a lot of credit for what we do right. We get a lot of mud thrown at us for what people perceive we do wrong. And I'm looking forward to a future, a good future for SGWASA. And Tim touched on commissioners, county commissioners. We have 2 on this board. The county has 2 slots. There are 4 county commissioners that have customers that are part of have constituents that are SGWASA customers. We have District 3, which is Sue Hinman. We have District 5, which is Russ May. We have District 6, which is Tim Karen, and we have District 7, which is me. Out of those 4, there's only one that's actually a SGWASA customer. That's me. Sue lives in the town of Oxford. She's an Oxford water customer. Russ is on a well. He's in the county. And Tim moved to the county, moved out of the city of Creedmoor to the county, and he's on a well. So when you talk about you don't want this one on the board, you don't want that one on the board, what are your choices? Your choices are limited. If you truly want people on the board who drink the water, who use the water, who are customers. And I've had some high water bills lately, and I've been catching some flack for it at home. And I finally found the culprit. It was a commode that leaked intermittently. And you go by and you think, wait a minute, what's that thing doing running? And what it would do, it wasn't leaking so much as it wouldn't fill up. And then when it did fill up, it wouldn't cut off like it's supposed to. And I had a heck of a time figuring it out because it's not a bathroom I use. So I expect my water bill to be lower this month. I hope it is anyway. I hope I found the problem finally. So I've rambled enough. And with that, is there any other business to come before us?
One more thing. Richard Balmer, thank you so very much for your financial reports, the way you do them. They are so easy to understand, and your patience is wonderful. And I appreciate this financial reporting that you do. I wish everybody would do it the way you do it. You're just cute.
And the smile that comes across his face when we're able to save money.
That's
When
right.
Mark finds a way to save money, the smile on Richard's face.
Look, $150 this month. I expect more next month.
$150 for the ask for $120.
Okay, is there any further business to come for us tonight? If not, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all those in favor say bye.
Bye.